Wonderful. So what is a service? Do we have anything called as a service in Kubernetes? What is the purpose of it? It acts like an interface for different applications which are basically different containers which are creating. How will service know, okay, which pods it has to basically combine to form one service? Labels. If service has two labels, right, and all the pods have one label, will it be working? Yes. Service కి రెండు ఉన్నాయి, కంటైనర్ పాడ్ కి ఒకటే ఉంది, వర్క్ అవుతుందా? Yes. Your answer is wrong. Right. Service should have whatever, sir, let us assume that whatever labels that are on the service, same label should be there on the pods. Only in that case it would be a match. I said that service has two labels and pod has one label. Is it a match? No. Let us assume that service has one label and pods have two labels, right, and one label is matching. Will it be a service? Yes. Remember this, right? Okay. Absolutely fine. Okay, this is something which we have looked into. Basically, whenever you give a pod, every pod will get its own IP address, right? Two pods, two containers in a pod cannot have what? Same IP address, is it? Conflicting port, because two pods will get the same IP address, right? So for example, in this example, you are seeing main container and supporting container. See the IP addresses of them, both are same. So you cannot have same port, right, for but any number of containers in that pod will have the same IP address, will have the same IP address. Don't get wrong on this. Ikkada wrong ayindante mottham Kubernetes wrong అయిపోతుంది, right? Pod will get one IP address. Anything inside the pod is a local host. Anything inside the pod is a local host. In one local host, can we have two web servers? No, not possible, right? That's the whole point here, right? Fine. How do you communicate from one pod to other pod? We'll have a pod network, which is basically used by some component on your node, which is called as, what is the networking component on your node? Kubelet, right? Aunantunnaru. The networking component is kube proxy. Kubelet is an agent which basically listens only from master, right? Fine. Intra-pod communication, I said that within the pod it is all local host, right? Okay. Pods will have only these states: pending, running, success, and failed. We have discussed about all of this, but this is a image pictorial representation of the same thing, right? Are all these statements making sense now? Pods are smallest unit of creation in Kubernetes. Pods can have one or more than one container within them, right? And pods are scheduled on nodes. They are declared via manifest files. We have not looked into how to write that manifest file. That's a different story, but yeah. Yes or no? Yes. Fine. Before we get into steps to create pods and what is this all about, let us basically try to install Kubernetes, right? And as usual, all of you people, don't waste your time on installation, all right? So if you really want to install Kubernetes, there are many ways to install it. Don't waste your time on Kubernetes, right? నాకు ఎప్పుడు వస్తున్న కన్సర్న్ ఇదే. డెవాప్స్ అంటే ఇన్స్టాలేషన్లు కాదు, కుబర్నెటాస్ ఇన్స్టాల్ చేసినందుకు మీకు ₹1,00,000 జీతం ఎవడో దానికి ఆల్రెడీ డాక్యుమెంట్ ఉంది. ఇంటర్ స్టూడెంట్ కూర్చోబెట్టి ఒకదాని తర్వాత ఒక కమాండ్ లైన్ గా కాపీ చేసి పేస్ట్ చేయమంటే అడు చేస్తాడు. దానికి మీ ప్రతిభ అవసరంలా. ఐఎమ్ ట్రాన్స్లేటింగ్ దిస్ యాజ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ఇన్ ఇంగ్లీష్, రైట్? డోంట్ వేస్ట్ యువర్ టైమ్ ఇన్ ఇన్స్టాలింగ్. Even if I have a +2 student, I give him a document and ask him to copy paste the instructions. He can. So don't think installation is DevOps, right? Kubernetes వచ్చా? వచ్చు. నేను ఉబంటులో ఇన్స్టాల్ చేశాను, సెంటాస్ లో ఇన్స్టాల్ చేశాను, వచ్చేసింది. I have installed Kubernetes on CentOS and Ubuntu, and I know Kubernetes. I am sorry, that is not Kubernetes, right? And if you go to the cloud, there is no need to install itself. You have to just select the service and say I want Kubernetes, and that is where most of you people will be working on. So don't waste your time on installations, all right? So, and one more problem which I see with people is installation copy completely from one website. సగం వరకు ఈ వెబ్సైట్, ఇంకో సగం ఆ వెబ్సైట్, అయితే దేవుడే కాపాడాలి మేము, right? You have to stick to one document. It will be a success or a failure. Half of the steps from one document and half of the steps from other document, and you ask me how do I resolve this, then I don't have such superpowers, all right? So please follow the complete one documentation, all right? Okay, now installing Kubernetes, right? When I speak of installations, there are many ways. The first one is, if you are on Windows 10 machine and you don't have many servers and you still want to work on smaller Kubernetes pods, you write a manifest file and see whether it is working or not, then you can install something called as Minikube. This will not be running through in the classroom. You can go to the Minikube, search in Google and install it on your system, right? This is never used in production. This is only to check whatever you have written is working or not. Okay, purely dev environment of Kubernetes, all right? And then there is a manual installation. When I say manual installation, everything using Linux commands. Okay, no apt-get, nothing. Okay, you will basically have to copy everything on your own. This is the most toughest installation, right? And we are not going to do that, right? And then per cloud provider, there are many installations. For example, in AWS we have something called as COPS, right? And one place where you don't need to install anything is Azure or Google Cloud, right? In Google Cloud and Azure Cloud, Kubernetes is a service. You have to just go there and say that I want Kubernetes, right? So these are the two places. And then Kubernetes has came up with an installation which is called as kubeadmin. Remember, kubeadmin is not for production, it is only for dev or test environments. Your production environment will be Azure or Google Cloud, right? Fine. So that's what your environments are. So in your resumes, whenever you're writing about Kubernetes, say that we are using Azure Cloud. And in Azure Cloud, Kubernetes is a service. So you don't need to install anything. And remember, there are no questions in interviews, how do you install Kubernetes? Can you just close your eyes and tell me all the steps? This is not a rhyme, guys. Right? Twinkle, twinkle, little star kadidi. Mottam gurtetteskodani. For every 1 month, it will change. Right? So in your resumes, whenever you are writing, in our local setups, we have used kubeadmin, right? And on our production servers, we have used Azure Cloud, because if you know Google Cloud, wonderful, you can just tell about Google Cloud. If that is not the case, Azure Cloud, because Azure Cloud is something which you'll be using in this class, right? Probably from next batch, when EKS is generally available to everyone, then I will add that one also. But as of now, it is not generally available, so I cannot basically give you an assumption to make a note of that in your resumes. It doesn't make sense, right? Once it is available to all the people in all the regions, then I'll try to add EKS, which is Elastic Kubernetes Services from AWS. So where is that you have worked in Kubernetes? Kubernetes, you have worked in your local dev and test environments on-premise. For that, you have installed kubeadmin, right? And then your productions are on Azure Cloud. Container services, as simple as that, right? So you basically stick to this. Don't go in a route where you say that I have manually installed. That is the most difficult installation, because one step goes down, you again start from beginning. That's the basic stuff. Now let me show you what are the different alternatives. Let me show you. Okay. So these are all the alternatives. Is it a local machine solution? Is it a hosted solution? Is it a turnkey solution? On-premise turnkey, custom? Okay. And the manual installation which I was trying to tell was that bare metal, right? In that bare metal, you go and do everything on your own, right? And now if you go into any solution of this category, let me just open few. You have Minikube, DIND, Ubuntu, IBM Cloud, right? Hosted solutions. Okay. So this, we are still not basically looking at this because this is still not the end release of AWS, right? Our focus will be on this Azure Container Services. Come down, you see these many options are there. Will you try to install each and every option? Do you think it is possible? We cannot do all of this. It is not possible for us to go with all of these options, right? So pick something which works for you. And here the most important thing is not installation. Most important thing is configuration. How do you create pods? How do you write the YAML files? How do you write it manifest files? That's the whole point. So please put your focus on that, not this, right? ఇక్కడ నుండి నెక్స్ట్ నెలంతా ఇన్స్టలేషన్, ఒక పోర్ట్ ఓపెన్ అవ్వలేదు, పని చేయట్లేదు, nothing doing. Don't get into all of that mess, right? So let me go with my stuff, which is kubeadmin installation. This is one way of installing Kubernetes, right? And basically I have to follow all of the steps which are written over here. Okay. And I have to choose one of the operating system, which is this. I cannot try this on Ubuntu 14, right? Similarly, I cannot try this on CentOS 6. You have to basically stick to these versions and basically go ahead and execute all of this commands, right? So in the classroom, I'll be basically copy pasting everything from here, all right? Okay. So for this, what I do is, let me log in into AWS and let me take 3 servers, all right? One is master, 2 are nodes. Fine. What is the question? Yeah. I don't need all of this. I'm terminating. And while this is working, I can take Ubuntu 6 or Red Hat 7. I'm taking Ubuntu 6, right? And I'll take T2 large machines, all right? And I'll take 3 of them. Okay. Or let me write, here it is. Next. Okay. Basically, you have to open the ports which are mentioned over here. These ports, if you open, that is more than enough. for your master node. But I will not take that. I'll open all. Okay, since I'm okay with the stuff, right? So I've opened all TCP and all UDP. You can do the same. Okay, I'm interested in the machines which are running. Instance state running. All right. The first one I will call it as master because I have to tag something as master, right? You can take smaller machines also. You can take smaller machines also. Master has to be a master needs 2 GB of RAM minimum, right? But nodes it's okay. Nodes are not that hefty components. But I have taken all the 3 large stuffs. All right. And now every day when I launch this machine, the machine's IP address is going to change. I don't want that nonsense. I don't want that nonsense because I can't keep them running for 24 hours or 72 hours because it would cost me heavily. So what I would do is I would scroll down and are you seeing something called as elastic IPs? All right. This is just for my convenience, guys. All right. Allocate new address. Allocate. Okay. Remember, the billing of this is quite funny. Generally, any service, when is it charged? When we are using it. But this is the only service in AWS which will be charged when you are not using it. Elastic IP is the only service where you will be charged if you are not using it. If you are using it, no bill. So as long as your EC2 machine is running, for this you will not be paying any charges. But if our EC2 machine is stopped, then you will be paying charges because it is reserving a public IP address. That's the concept of Amazon. Fine. Now, let me select this actions, associate address, and let us associate with our master first. Is it a required step? Generally not required whenever you are working in one stretch. But for me, it is required because I'll be using this instance tomorrow also. And it doesn't make sense for me to keep them running throughout the day. All right. Yeah. And then actions, associate. Where do you want it to be associated? Node 1. Oh, both of them I put it as node 1, is it? Okay. Let me change one of the machines stuff as node 2 also. Fine. I change it to node 2. All right. And the third one, I'm allocating this or associating this with node 2. Why I had to do this? Every time you restart or shut down and start the AWS EC2 machine, you will get a new public IP address. Tomorrow, I don't want to get into this mess saying that, okay, it is not working. I have to go through a new IP address. For that convenience, I have done this. Right? Generally, in the real time scenarios, will you do this? Never. Only your master will have a static IP address, not your nodes. Because master to node communication is always via private IP addresses. And private IP address never changes. So you are good with that, even though you stop your machines. What I was doing this because I access all the 3 machines for testing what is installed and all of that. Because we are learning, we need access to all the 3 machines. In your enterprise, the only thing which you will be communicating with is your master. Your nodes are basically joined, they go, they come, all of that stuff happens. And master to node communication is generally over private IP addresses. never on public. So it's absolutely fine even if you have just one elastic IP address for your master, right? Okay, fine. Let us go back to our stuff. First, we have to configure master, all right? For the people over the web, you can try parallelly with me. And for the people who have broad systems by any chance, you can also do it parallelly if you want. Create 3 machines, 3 EC2 machines, and do whatever I'm doing, all right? Because the only thing which I've Googled is throughout this classroom, I'm just following this document, kubeadmin installation, and I'm blindly following this document, right? So these are for your nodes. These ports are enough, right? But it's okay. First thing, I want to install Docker. How do you install Docker? You can install Docker something like this or like this, right? Whatever that makes sense to you. So let me follow the toughest path. First thing is I have to get into the master. Is this my master? Yes. Man, what is happening? Seriously? Okay. IP addresses might have changed, right? If the 22 port is not working, I have to select all TCP and IP. Yes. There is no way that 22 port is blocked because of this. Open. Fine. What can I do now? Let me restart this. Sometimes you will face these issues. We can't help it. One easier solution for me was if I could have changed the label and made something else as a master, but that's fine. Okay. So we have this in stopped state. Let me select instance state, start. And also in the meantime, I'll remove all the known host files. What is this file, by the way? Whenever you do SSH, you are getting one command, right? Do you want me to add this to the known host? You enter yes, and then you log in into this machine. So whenever you log in into some machine, the entry of that will be made into that file. So after some point of time, you can basically remove it if you want. Please, now it should work, man. What is happening? Oh man. Good. Let me do one more thing. Let me try to ping other machine. I'll take something else as master. I don't want to waste your time. So let us see if this is happening. Idi work out. This shouldn't be the case, man. Why is it so? Guys, 5 minutes. I'll just cross check. If it is not happening, let us create this in AWS, Azure, right? I don't want to waste time in finding out why it is not happening, right? I just want to cross check some certain things. If it is quite straightforward, wonderful. Come on. This is all good. Um, okay. Last thing, table. Sometimes when you want to do the things faster, right, you'll get messed up. Okay. Thanks. Fine, it is working. Okay. Why it was not working was it has gone and created the machine in the private subnet of my VPC. So private subnet is a subnet where you cannot access it from the internet. So I had to change that. Okay. For you, you will not get into all of these problems because you don't mess with default subnets, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Working? Yes. Okay. Now, no brainer. Blindly, basically, following whatever is written over here. Right. So I'm becoming a root user and then I'll be copying these commands. Today's class is not much on a conceptual side. It is just following some document. That's it. Right. Since I've taken Ubuntu, I'm following this. If I've taken Red Hat, I would have clicked on the second tab and then I would have copied. So, for example, for the people who want to do the same stuff on Red Hat, you can just select the second tab and get it done. Okay. 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 And then we have to install these three components: kubeadmin, kubelet, and kube controller. Right. So we are installing this separately because kubeadmin will not install kubelet or kube controller. So that's why you have to follow this documentation, right? Yeah. Fine. Okay. Good. Okay. Now this I can type now. Okay. And the last command, basically. So once you finish this, you would have kube admin, kubelet, and kube controller manager. All right. Done. Yes. Okay. We have this driver, so that we don't need to do anything. Fine. This is the installation part. We are good. Now we have to follow the rest of the steps to configure this. Okay. Fine. So the documents which we have to basically follow is we have to basically follow all of this kube admin in it, right? And then we would be getting some settings, right? And we have to follow this stuff, right? Now the first command which I'm going to run is kube admin init. Good. This is what happens when I try to install. Half of the people sleeping in the classroom, half of the people thinking about something else. So generally that's the reason why I don't install anything in the classroom. సగం మంది పడుకుంటున్నారు, మిగతా సగం మంది ఏం చేయాలో ఆలోచిస్తున్నారు. Okay. Now basically you have to execute this command, right? But remember, you need to run this command as a what user? Regular user. Don't forget that stuff, right? I am as a root user right now, right? So the first thing which I would try to do is, let me copy this and paste it in some sort of a notepad. This generally most of the people forget, and they would run this on the root itself, and then kube admin will not work, because on the documentation it is being clearly written that you have to execute it as a normal user, right? Fine, we are going good. And then after that, to make the other nodes join, you need this command. Remember, we have done similar sort of work in swarm. Yes, whenever we have created the multi-node cluster, on first thing we have done swarm init, and then it has given us some command, and that command we have gone and entered on from the other machines. If you see the stuff here also, it's almost the same. Here also it is almost the same, right? Fine. Now let me copy these commands. Become a normal user, which is Ubuntu, right? Fine. Okay. Are we good? So we have done this job. Now let us go back to the documentation. Okay. He would try to tell you do this. Okay. Okay, if you are a root user, then if you want, you can run that. Okay, and then that's not it. We have to basically execute the pod network, the network which kube proxy has to use. And if you see, there are many options. There are many options. All right, and let me use VNet, or you can use anything for that matter. And every network has the same purpose. All right, these are the different providers of it. And now, basically, whenever you want to set up this, he would try to tell how do you do this. Okay, you have to just say kubectl apply, and then you have to apply this command. Let me do this. Okay, now let me run kubectl get pods, no resources found, and then let me do this all. Am I getting certain things? Right, let me wait. All of this should be in running state. If you don't install the pod network, right, if you just go through this logs, go through the previous command which we have run, there was something like 2.23, right? And once you have run for the first time 0/3, the DNS will not work. And for the DNS to be working, you need to have pod network. And for that, we have created the Weave network, right? So why I have taken Weave network? Because I have used the same thing for some other purpose, right? You can take the other kinds of networks also. Once you have kube CTL, get pods, all namespaces, and everything is running, you are good to go. If there is something that is not working, if the DNS is not working, right, even though you execute that command on the node, it will not work, because this is a networking component. Okay, what is the DNS component? Why do we use DNS in container world? Remember ping C1 from C2, resolving the other containers by its names. In this case, we have to resolve pod names, service names, all of that. And for that, you need some DNS server. And whenever you install a pod network, your DNS will be functional. Otherwise, it will not be. Right? So then the only component which will be working is your master, not your nodes. So that's why it is very important for you to initialize and then create the pod network. So once you install Kubernetes commands, what are the two simple commands which I've run? Kubeadmin init. And then in the documentation, I got two things which I had to copy. One was for the same machine, the other one was for the nodes. And then I have basically applied the pod network. And even for that, did I did anything magical? No. I have just, there were many network providers, and I have selected one network provider called as VNet. And in there was an instruction, kubectl apply some command. I have copied and I have pasted, and everything is running. Right? If you don't do this, your Kubernetes is not functional, because networking is an important aspect of your complete Kubernetes stuff. Right? Now, let us see what are the other stuffs. Okay. Now, to join your nodes, I need to do this. All right. And this is a basic pattern where it says that how do you join your nodes and all of that stuff. But remember, our nodes also need to have kubeadmin. Our nodes also are supposed to have a kubeadmin. And do our nodes required to install Docker? Node Docker undala? Yes or no? Yes. Are you sure? On the node, do we need Docker? Yes. Why? What is the component that is responsible for that? In the nodes, you have three components. What are they? One is kubelet. The other one is kube proxy. For that, we have created the pod network right now. What is the third component? What is container engine? In our case, what is container engine? So we need to install it, right? Yes. Okay. Fine. Let me go back. And then we have to do the same exercise again on the other two machines. I'll be doing it on one, not the two, right? But you can take different machines also. It is not required that everything has to be on Ubuntu. You can take master on Ubuntu and node on Red Hat or any other combination. All right. So now let me log in into my node 1. Fine. Very boring, right? Yeah. Even the same feeling here. That's why I don't install stuff. I try to install it outside the classroom. But this I had to show. Otherwise, I know that you people had to. You will waste a lot of time in this. Fine. Become a root user. Sudo hyphen minus I. Go ahead. We have the steps. Okay. Let me follow the same stuff. This time I would be slightly brutal, not heavily, but let us see what happens. Okay. Good. This is the most easiest way to install Kubernetes after Minikube. Minikube is a simple installation on your system. You have to just download and install. And for the people who have chocolate, you can just say Choco install Minikube. As simple as that. Okay. Next. Okay. Okay. This obviously will have. We don't need to do anything, right? So this you have to do it on the other all the machines. The first page is the basic configuration page across, right? Okay. Now, what was the command which we were supposed to run? This command, right? Let us see what happens when we run this. Okay. Fine. It says that okay, I have done this. Now you can go to your master and then execute kubectl get nodes command, and then you would be able to see whether this machine is joined or not. Okay. So shall I exit? Okay. Now let me go to my Kubernetes master. Kubectl get. Are we seeing two nodes? One is the master itself. The other one is whatever we have added just now. Right? That's what it is. Similarly, you have to add rest of the machines to the cloud. If I have to add a third machine, again I have to do the same steps. Go into the third machine, install whatever was I have installed, and then basically whatever command which we have copied, just copy it from the Kubernetes and it would start working, right? So this is a cluster. Now we have basically this stuff. Now the parts that are left from our end are writing the YAML file and basically getting it worked and getting it delivered, right? So this installation, I'll not say it is difficult, but what I would say is it would take time. It would take time for you to set up two machines, having them on the same private network, and then getting the stuff done, right? Good. This, there is no optimization because I'm following the documentation, and you also have to follow the same documentation. There is no other way out. Okay. While join, we need to specify the master IP address. Yes. And if you have seen the master IP address was provided as a private IP, not as a public IP. Public is for you and me to get inside that. All right. Okay. Do we need to install Kubernetes before Kubernetes, Docker before Kubernetes master? Obviously, right? Because container engine is not selected while installing it. It has to be there before you install Kubernetes, because you are doing container orchestration. Kada? So you are doing container orchestration, and for that to happen, you have to have your engine first. Whatever is the engine. Will pods have IP address? Will they? Right? What was my first slide of today's class? Every pod will have an IP address. All the containers which are running in the pod will be like local host, because it will not get different IP addresses. So every pod will get an IP address, right? Okay then. Now let us go back to our stuff. Okay. Let me not be very technical about it, but see what has been written over here. There is a file where it says that there is some API version, right? And then you are seeing something called as a kind, and in the kind, what is written? Pod. Okay, good. And then there is some metadata. Metadata is for us, fine. And then there is specification, and in the specification there is a container, and in that container they are basically telling that I want to create a pod, I want to create a container, and the name of that container is hello container, right? And the image which it uses is Jenkins image, and the port which it needs is it a very difficult language, right? In Kubernetes, your configuration files will look something like this, and this is a YAML format, and this is YAML format, and we'll be using YAML format for getting the Kubernetes stuff done. We have learned JSON, right? So similarly, we'll be using YAML, right? Fine. For now, what I do is, let me blindly copy paste this. Okay. So there is no need for copy pasting if I'm not wrong. Let me go to the E drive, A square zone, and if I'm not wrong, we should have a Kubernetes zone. All right. So go to https://github.com/a square zone, and there is a GitHub zone over there, and then there is a pod YAML, right? So let me right click with this. Okay, here he is using engineering, whatever it is. See what is the stuff? Is it looking much difficult? No. All right. So now what I would do is, I'd basically copy this. Okay. Go into my master. Okay. Create a directory called as manifest, and then I'll be creating a file called as vi pod.yml, and in this I'll be blindly pasting whatever I've written. I don't know what it is, we have not learned it, but let us see what happens. Okay, kubectl apply -f. What is it saying? See the command which I am executing, there is some pattern around it. Get, oh, fine. It will also tell on which node it has been allocated. Okay. So for getting what are the nodes that are associated, what is the command which I have executed? kubectl get nodes. I got it. Minus o wide will give me more information. All right. So, and whenever I want to execute, apply any manifest file, any manifest, whether you are writing a pod, whether you are writing a service, whether you are writing a deployment, my command is always the same. kubectl apply minus f. Right. And in that you might be creating a pod, you might be creating a service, or you might be creating a deployment. So based out of it, you would be writing something like, for example, if I'm writing services, my command would sound something like kubectl get svc. If I'm writing deployment, kubectl get deployments. If I'm writing about nodes, if I want to know about nodes, get nodes. That's how the whole stuff of this works. Simple command lines and then YAML files. Commands are very simple. kubectl apply, just tell what is the path of your file, minus f, and give the path of your file. Okay, these commands don't change. Right, making sense? Right. So kubectl, let us see if we have something called as delete. Okay, are you seeing something like kubectl delete? Yes. So let me do kubectl delete minus f pod dot yaml. So did you got the context? Tomorrow, whatever file which we write, okay, if I want to basically create it, I'll be using apply. If I want to delete it, I'll be using delete. All right. If I want to change it also, it is an apply. You make changes in your YAML file and then you would say basically apply again. Simple commands, right? Commands are not very difficult over here. One thing for it to get it working is you need to install pod network, and pod network has to be installed on your where? Master. Once master has the DNS component, then it would start working on your nodes. So kubectl get pods hyphen all namespaces. Right? I have no pods running, but whenever I run this, I'm seeing some pods. Yes or no? These are system pods. These pods help in making Kubernetes up and running. E pods lo a pod lagapoina Kubernetes run out. These are called as system pods. The pods which you and me are creating, basically they will be shown in pods. But whenever you give all namespaces, then the system pods are shown. Right? For more information, obviously you would always use -o wide. So this will give you more information on which machine is it running. So total we have 2 servers, right? So let us see what is 143 and what is the other one. Let me go to the master. What is the master's private IP address? Okay. My node 1. What is it? So are there any pods, system pods which are running on 203? So what are those pods? If you see, those are the pods with respect to proxies. So kube proxy component, which we have spoken about, is a system pod. And what is it responsible for? Networking. That is a pod that is giving you networks. All right. So let me do this again. kubectl create or apply -f, okay, pod dot yaml. Okay, kubectl get pods. Oh, I'm using the same mistake again and again. Yeah, kubectl get pods. Here I'll be getting only pods which I ran. If I give all namespaces, then I'll be getting system pods. But at this moment, I'm not interested in system pods. So I want extra information. So I'd say -o wide. See, am I getting an IP address? This is an IP address which is being given to my pod. I said right, every pod will get an IP address, and this is an IP address for our hello pod. All right, but this will not be able to access it. because this is internal networking. How to do that? Then we will be learning a concept called as node port. Then we will learn a concept called as load balancer, all of that. But my pod is getting an IP address and this pod is executing on where? Node or master? 203 was node, right? So you do anything and everything. Let me do one thing. CP pod.yaml to my pod.yaml. And let me change certain stuff in this. Vi my pod.yaml kind pod and name of the pod is hello pod again. And now here I am creating a pod which is of the image HTTPD, whatever it is. All right. Now what is the command to run this again? kubectl apply -f and then right, and then to get the pods kubectl get pods, and let me use, so am I getting two different IP addresses for two different pods? Yeah, both pods are running on the same machine. All right. So did we execute something like docker run, docker pull and all of that? Now let us see what is docker doing on this machine. So let me execute the docker commands. Docker. Okay. Antena commander. Yes. But for this to work, I have to log in. Why did I execute that command? Okay. So if you see, we have hell lot of Docker images. But are you seeing the image which we have executed? What was the image which we wanted? One is Nginx, the other one was. Are you seeing it here? These are all the images of Kubernetes. These are all the images of Kubernetes, and if you see, it will consist of the components which we have spoken about: Kube API Manager, Kube Scheduler, Kube Controller Manager, right? Yes or no? So everything is internally a container again. Fine. Now let me go and go into the other machine. So what is my other machine? That is the node 1. Let us see what is happening on Docker here. All right. Okay. So I have to do one more thing. I also here also have to add that sudo user mod -ag add to the Docker group a user called as Ubuntu. Exit, login, and let me see something called as Docker images. Or is it something? Yes. Okay. So what is this node? So your images which you are running are still being downloaded on the node, not on the master. So master will not remember anything. The only thing master node says about your pods. It will not know about your containers, right? And this kubelet, in this machine there is a kubelet, and this kubelet while executing will basically do whatever Docker commands which it has to run. So Docker run command is executed by whom? Kubelet. Kubelet on your node will be executing. So that's why these images are on your nodes, not on the master. Not on the master. Is it making sense? Right? So if I use any image now? Obviously you can. So for example, we have created the image which was like game of life, right? So for that game of life, I pushed it now. So can I create a pod with with Sheikh Khaja Ibrahim / Game of Life :1.0? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the whole point. So images are not downloaded on the master. The specific images which you want to run, they are downloaded on nodes, and specifically on the node which you are running. Right? Are we good? Yes. And on the on this, what are the other things which are basically being downloaded? One is the proxy. The other one is networking components. The other stuff is all about networking. Right? So you'll have basically these stuff which are running, and then this kube proxy will basically enable networking communications, will enable the networking communications. Right? Now any number of nodes which you add to this, same story. Any number of nodes which you are adding to this, same story. So what is the gray area now? What is the gray area now in whatever we have learned? How do I write the YAML files? Right? How can I write that? What is that? What is the syntax? What was that API version? What was that kind? Right? So this is what our next focus would be on. Right? So the use case which I'm looking at is, I've taken two applications. One is Node.js one, the other one is Java application. Right? Initially, I'll be basically starting with pods. I'll be creating pods and all of that. And then basically my end aim is I want to create a deployment on that. I want to create a deployment on that. So basically what I would simulate is, I'll simulate two versions of this application, write a deployment, right? And then submit or commit or give a production release to that deployment. First one, bring up the application. Next, change it to the next version. Next version is not working correctly, so go back to the previous version. So this is our scenario which you will be running through. Okay. So there are two applications. I'm not sure. Tomorrow morning I'll decide what is the application which I'll be running. All right. So it will have two components. One is the middleware. The other one is the other aspect of the data which will store some data of it. All right. So we'll be looking into this. So our application is two containers application, and then we can scale them individually. We'll look into all of those options. Right. So we'll be using services. We'll be using pods. Pods obviously will use. So services and deployments is our scenario, and I would expect you guys also to tell the same scenario for it. The only thing that is going to change in your cases, here I am using open source Java based or Node.js based applications. You will be using your company's applications. The rest of the stuff is exactly the same. Fine. So is it looking now? Today's class was all about installation, but I would expect that you would have these installations ready on your systems. Okay. ఒకవేళ ఇన్స్టాలేషన్ నేను చేయలేను అనుకున్న కేసులో అట్లీస్ట్ ట్రై టు ఇన్స్టాల్ మినీ క్యూబ్ ఆన్ యువర్ సర్వర్ ఆన్ యువర్ విండోస్ 10 machine. Okay. And install docker on your windows 10. Do these two things, so then we can do something. If that is not the case, we cannot do anything. Right? You will not be able to simulate the scenarios. Fine. Any questions on whatever? I don't want to ask this question, but still, if you have any questions, you can ask me. How can we do all of this on a local machine? Not possible to do this because simulating nodes is very difficult. But if you want to just check the YML files which you are writing are working or not, then you can use something called as minikube. I've used that one YML file which I have copy pasted, and then I have done kubectl apply and then all of that. Right? You can simulate that using minikube, but not really this scenario. One thing which you can do is you can create 2 or 3 virtual machines in your system. Okay, enable network, make one virtual machine as master and the rest of the 2 as nodes. Even that is possible. Right? If your machine is really good. Does pod network conflict with physical network? No chance, because this is a software defined network and physical network is something else. They will not conflict. Right? What is a YML? YML is a file representation. It is a data representation, much like a JSON file format. So we'll be starting with that file format tomorrow. So we have learned how to write JSON. We'll be learning how to write YML in tomorrow's class. I'll be taking a couple of examples and then we can do that. Right? Any other questions? How master knows to which node the images are to be downloaded? Master is not at all worried. మా డ్రైవర్ పొద్దున్నే టిఫిన్ తిన్నాడో నాకు అనవసరం. I think you are making my statement is very much in sync with what is happening on the Docker, on the Kubernetes. Kubernetes is not worried on what image it is. Kubernetes is worried whether the pod is up and running on. In pod, what image has to be downloaded? That is kubelet headache. That is kubelet headache. So it is well delegated process. Okay. Other than Java applications, can we use other technology? You can use any technology as long as they are running on Linux. As long as they are running on Linux, you can take any technology. Right? That's why I said Node.js and Java, because I don't want to make an assumption that everything works only Java, DevOps is for Java. No. For anything that we can run on a Linux application, you can basically do it. I take examples of Java or Node.js a lot because we will find a lot of open sources there. Python will find open sources, but not really web applications. We will find lot of utilities. So that's why I'll not be I'm not in a position to run Python applications. Or else I can take Ruby on Rails. I can take Python. I can take any application as such which runs on Linux. Fine. We have created the YML file in the master. How pod is created in the node? Why do we use Kubernetes for? To create pods on multi machines. Will master create nodes on itself? No or yes? No. Right? So what is the other stuff that is left? Node, right? And how is master communicating with the node? We have do you remember that we have installed the pod network? Yes. That's how it is happening. Yeah. Okay. Docker run PS. Does it show running containers? Anil, is it your first day by any chance? Okay. We don't have Docker run PS. We have Docker PS or Docker run. All right. So PS is for list me all the processes, and run is to create a new container. So please get through your basics. If it is your first class, it's okay. Right? Yeah. In real time, we are not seeing DevOps for other than Java application. Is it real? Oh, is it? Who has said you? Our company is using completely an application which is written in completely C, core C, and we are using DevOps. And it is not even a web application. It is a software which is being run on your network switches and routers. So we are using Chef to manage it. So it is there is nothing like the technology based. It is your application based, right? Okay. In the case if I have 3 nodes and all the 3 nodes have the same YAML file, it creates 3 Nginx on all the nodes. Don't think too much on YAML files. I have just copy pasted an YAML file. Mana YAML inka నేర్చుకోవాలా. Okay. I have just, whenever you learn programming language, right? The first program, what is that you see? Hello world. Will you write that? No. You will copy paste that. I have done the same thing. So we have a lot of music to be faced tomorrow. So we have to write multiple things in that. So we will be coming across something called as replication controller, where you can basically sync up multiple pods. A lot of stuff left. So YAML questions I'm not taking, right? Because I've not done anything on YAML. To be very specific, copy pasted one file and executed simple commands. The only point which I wanted to prove today was executing commands on Kubernetes are not challenging. You have to just say kubectl, write everything in a file, and then apply -f, delete -f, and get whatever you have created. If I'm creating pods, I'll do get pods. If I'm creating services, I'll do get service. If I'm creating deployments, I'll do get deployments. That was my intention. All right. Okay. Nowhere in the YML I'm not getting into YML. Can you please give the URL of A square zone? Okay. So https://github.com/A square zone. Okay. Bhargav, I've done that. Okay. Okay. Fine. Any chance of the previous version of the images gets deleted, auto deleted after the latest has been deployed? It might. It might. Right. Yes. Okay then. So I'm stopping it at here, and let us meet tomorrow to discuss about YAML files and some use case around it. All right. So I'm taking a 2-tier application which has a middleware and a database, and that I'll be trying to deploy on a Kubernetes scale. You can add one more web server to it, but I'm not using a web server because already I have a load balancer within the Kubernetes itself. So that's why I'm not using a web server. Otherwise, you can add one more component to it, which is Nginx app server, whether it is Node.js or Tomcat, and then one database server, which is MySQL or whatever, MongoDB or whatever it is. So I'll take one application around that. Thanks, guys.